Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell, and I'm joined today by attorney Stephen Jessup, and we're going to talk about a long-term disability insurance claim against Hartford in which Stephen was able to successfully obtain benefits for our client. And Stephen, this video, I want to go through the background of the case, how you were able to prove that Hartford had wrongfully denied benefits, and then provide some tips for people who are watching this video that may help them with their appeal and let them know about things that either can help keep them on claim or what lays ahead if they have to deal with a denial. So getting right into it, what was the background of history of this particular claim?
So the client was, they'd labeled like an office administrator. It was a small office space. She was like an assistant to one of the managers, but basically like a secretarial type work. So Hartford had deemed it sedentary work. When she contacted our office, we were already at that 24-month mark in a policy where it goes from being unable to perform the material duties of your own occupation as opposed to those of any occupation based upon training, education, experience. So she had been on claim already for those initial 2 years. Interestingly enough, and kind of confusing, but I find that this does happen quite a bit. Ultimately, the diagnosis that we were working with was fibromyalgia. However, Hartford had kind of been reviewing everything as a mental health claim for those initial 24 months, saying that a lot of the information would support psychosomatic pain and all this type of stuff. And interestingly to me, even though they found that, the record didn't have a lot of mental health treatment. So when I'm reviewing the initial denial letter and the claim information, it was almost as if Hartford, even though they don't have a 24-month limitation for fibromyalgia or self-reported symptom conditions in the policy, was trying to take her fibromyalgia, make it mental health, so they could try to cap her at 24 months. So that was the early claim history. So she was on, and she didn't really push the issue with them too much. She was getting paid. There wasn't much of a problem in that. So she wasn't fighting it until it started getting towards the end. As you know, Hartford, about 6 months prior to that change in definition from your own occupation to any occupation, will conduct a new review of the claim. It was at that point that the claim history showed that she was really saying, no, this isn't it. I have, fibromyalgia. I can't physically do it. And then the denial itself was kind of, confusing when I first read the denial letter and then having to go back hearing what she told me, because then they were saying, oh, well, there's not enough information to support that you have this condition that would prevent you from working. We do still think it's mental health based. That's capped at 24 months. But even if you did have fibromyalgia and we thought it was disabling or had impairment, we still think you could do these alternate jobs. So they were trying to, at that point, kind of retroactively cover all their bases. I think there was some sloppiness in the initial claim decision.
And what did they rely upon to deny the claim, even though they agreed she was disabled for 24 months?
Peer reviews. They just got updated reviews from doctors. Hey, take a look at these notes. Do you think there's any evidence of impairment? Now, at the time of the denial, she was only treating with a nurse practitioner, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? But the insurance companies, the way they see it, like when we argue if they only have a nurse review something and that nurse disagrees with the client's doctor, here they are saying, well, our doctors don't think your nurse has it right. So they were trying to, pull that card.
So do you think the claimant was at a disadvantage having a nurse practitioner?
Only a nurse practitioner, definitely. I think very much so, because there was always referencing back in the reports of the two doctors that reviewed it. The nurse says X, Y, and Z. There's been no follow-up with a rheumatologist or this and all that. So it was almost like, yeah, she's going to see someone. They may be prescribing some stuff, but she's whether not getting adequate care, or honestly, if you really want to get down to it, the nurse doesn't know what she's talking about compared to us, doctors.
And then you said earlier that they only did peer reviews. What are peer reviews, and is that a normal operating procedure for Hartford?
Yeah, so a peer review is normal operating for Hartford and most insurance companies, where they just have someone get your records and review it. And at the time of the denial, the records were not a lot. It was a small amount. She was not getting any type of mental health treatment at that point, just with the nurse practitioner. Funds became an issue to be able to get treatment at some point. So peer review is very common. It's just a doctor. Sometimes it's in-house, or they hire from one of these companies to do a review. Hartford is known for doing independent medical evaluations, probably more so than other insurance companies. They're known for it. In this case, they didn't bother with it. And I think also part of that is the nature of fibromyalgia and most chronic pain conditions is it's subjective. It's only what the patient reports. So there's not like the ability of MRIs or other objective tests to really get to it. So it kind of becomes a credibility situation.
And I want to get into that further in a minute because it's definitely, there's a lot to discuss about fibromyalgia and the types of evidence to obtain. But once you reviewed this complete denial letter, you saw there were peer reviews and then you were retained to handle the appeal to help get benefits reinstated. So what was your strategy?
Well, first and foremost, we always get the claim file. So that Hartford has to send everything they have on you, whether that you've submitted, your doctors submitted, they've created. Get that, because for me the most important thing is to really see those reports. I don't trust denial letters a lot of ways. They cherry pick and use stuff that's good for them. So first and foremost, it's getting those reports and seeing if there's actually anything that is supportive for the client. In this situation, there really wasn't that much stuff that the peer reviews were saying, well, okay, we could see X, Y, and Z. Outside of one of the doctors did say she'd probably be limited to light duty restrictions. One doctor said no restrictions and limitations, can work full-time in a sedentary capacity. At least the other doctor said there'd be light duty would be reasonable on it. So getting that, and then the strategy also is getting her medical records. Like I said, at around the time of the denial, the treatment records, there weren't a lot. There was much earlier on, so just getting all of that. And then it became a matter of, so we know Hartford draws a line in the sand at this point in time, around this 24 months. So it's a matter of what can we work within a reasonable amount of time from that date that they're saying you're not disabled anymore to perfect what might be missing. And in this situation, and a lot in pain conditions that prevent people, and fibromyalgia, it just isn't pain. There's fatigue, there's mental fog, there's a whole host of things that can come with it. So in this situation where we're talking, no restrictions and limitations, and I don't have the ability of objective evidence, like an MRI, this is why she's in pain, she has these problems, then it's a matter of what can we build to, prove that the diagnosis is causing the disability. This situation, we did use a functional capacity evaluation. Now, she did have residual, and this FCE, she did have some residual abilities that would put her above sedentary for certain duties, like lifting and carrying to a minimal amount. But other aspects of it, she couldn't sit for long periods of time. She needed to lay down. She had to take so many frequent breaks that overall, working with the physical therapist, we were able to present a situation where, yes, she has some ability in the sedentary range, but if we look at the whole criteria of it, she isn't able to perform, full-time work duties. So really, in preparing this one, it was working with the therapist on this test and going back with edits and asking additional questions about, well, if it's saying this, how would it fall in line with that? And once we had that report, it was then working with the nurse practitioner, who was great, was amazing. She was very supportive in writing letters, filling out forms, putting her statement to refute what the doctors had to say. And I think in part too, she was definitely offended that, here's a situation, these doctors who've never examined her patient says she's fine, and is also attacking, the credentials and credibility of her as the treatment provider. So it was creating that information that was able to serve as an anchor to say, well, here's objective testing to show the restrictions, and then working with her nurse practitioner to bolster and attack what they had before.
Right, and that was critical in this case because with fibromyalgia, there really is there's no objective test to prove you have.
Correct. And in so many times we'll see where someone will, who has fibromyalgia, there's a denial, they do their own appeal and they only get that one chance at it, and they just, explain what's going on, or they don't get that additional testing, and the insurance company just rubber stamps the denial. And even with a functional capacity evaluation, people, we've talked about that a lot. You can go get and have one done. An insurance company can still rip it apart. Even if it says you can't work, they will find certain things about whether validity testing or effort and all these other things to try to say this isn't an accurate reflection. So just having the FCE alone doesn't necessarily mean that there's more to it than that.
And it's important, not every functional capacity exam is the same. It's important how it's administered, what's tested, how the results are documented, because often we see Hartford requests them also. And often we rip them apart to say the way the testing is done is not representative of how the job was going to be performed for that particular person. So it is very important how, when you get all of the facts and gather the additional evidence like you did in this appeal, how you then put it together. And did you just get the evidence and send it in, or how extensive was the appeal letter that you actually wrote?
You know, I think prior to coming to do this video, when I was just reviewing everything, the appeal letter was, I think, like around 28 pages. So it was extensive. Not a lot was with regards to recent medical. I tried to really build up the base on the older medical, but a lot of it was argument. You know, and not legal argument, not saying, oh, you did this wrong under the law. It was argument of trying to punch holes in their reports. Hartford's, review process for the prior 2 years, showing how there was inconsistencies that didn't make sense. Because you would argue, well, if you found me disabled, how come all of a sudden I can magically do? And in her situation, I was disabled from doing my own sedentary job, but now I can magically do a different sedentary job. So, it was a lot of argument, and then drawing, in the report, the testing, and in a lot of ways, line by line with the testing and that those peer review reports.
So there's obviously a tremendous amount of strategy that goes behind.
It was, and honestly, it was a very difficult case. It was one that, I felt we had good arguments that if there were going to be a denial, we'd at least have things to be able to argue in court. But it wasn't one that when I submitted necessarily that I felt, hey, this one is going to. It was a tough case. So when we got word this week, actually this week of it, it was phenomenal. The client was absolutely ecstatic. And I think in huge part too, I think a lot of people, just representing people with fibromyalgia over all these years, they feel vindicated, because the attack of someone by an insurance company who has fibromyalgia, you're making it up. We don't believe you. And I know with this client, in her instance, she started to even doubt herself. She's like, well, maybe there's something more. Like, she was broken. She was emotionally broken over the thing. So, to be able to deliver that good news to her was a nice start to the week.
Well, congratulations to her, and congratulations to you on doing a great job. I know fibromyalgia cases are super challenging, and whether someone has a fibromyalgia claim or a Hartford claim, they should feel free to reach out to you or any of our disability attorneys. Will immediately provide you with a free consultation, which is very easy to do just by giving us a call or submitting a request on our website. And no matter where you live in the country, we can help you. So should you need us in the future, we look forward to speaking with you. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process, and when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now, at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search, plus we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now, we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.